Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we'll focus on another important part of the predicate, the indirect object. Let's start by recalling how the direct object works. To find the direct object, we ask the question, what or whom, after the verb. Now, the indirect object, IO, depends on that direct object. It tells us to whom or for whom the action is done. Look at this example. She gave her friend a gift. She gave what? A gift. That's the direct object. She gave the gift to whom? Her friend. That's the indirect object. And here's the key rule. A sentence cannot contain an indirect object unless it already has a direct object. The indirect object cannot exist on its own. It depends on the direct object for its meaning. Now that we know the relationship between DO and IO, let's look at what an indirect object actually is. An indirect object is always a noun or a pronoun, never a prepositional phrase. It usually refers to a person or recipient who benefits from the action indirectly. For example, he told them the truth. In this sentence, them is the indirect object, and the truth is the direct object. Now that we know what the indirect object is, let's see where it appears in the sentence. The indirect object usually comes between the verb and the direct object. In other words, the structure is verb, indirect object, direct object. For example, he sent his teacher an email. His teacher, indirect object. An email, direct object. If we remove the direct object, an email, the sentence, he sent his teacher, becomes incomplete, because again, the IO depends on the DO. Now let's compare two very similar sentences. One, she gave her friend a gift. Two, she gave a gift to her friend. Both sentences express the same meaning, but grammatically they are not identical. In the first sentence, her friend is an indirect object because it comes before the direct object and is not introduced by a preposition. In the second sentence, to her friend is not an indirect object. It's a prepositional phrase because it starts with to and comes after the direct object. Only certain transitive verbs can have an indirect object, usually verbs that involve giving, showing, or sending something. Common examples are included in this list. Let's test one together. He wrote his friend a letter. Ask, he wrote what? A letter, direct object. He wrote the letter to whom? His friend, indirect object. If you can answer both questions meaningfully, the sentence contains both a direct and an indirect object. Now let's visualize it. In a sentence diagram, the indirect object is placed below the verb on a short horizontal line connected by a vertical line. The direct object stays to the right of the verb on the main line. For example, this old man has never sent his friends a message. The subject, this old man, comes first, followed by the verb has sent. The direct object, a message, is placed to the right, while his friends appears under the verb, showing that it receives the action indirectly. The adverb never is placed under the verb as a modifier. Let's summarize what we've learned today. The direct object answers what or whom. The indirect object answers to whom or for whom. The indirect object cannot appear without a direct object. It comes between the verb and the direct object. It's always a noun or pronoun, never a prepositional phrase. And in sentence diagrams, it's shown under the verb. Understanding indirect objects will help you create clearer, more accurate sentences and recognize how actions transfer between people and things. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next video where we'll explore objective complements and how they add more depth to verb meanings.